April 17, 2025, Western Yemen. A heat signature appeared on a Houthi radar console. Fast, high, and silent operators assumed it was a drone, a routine intercept. They armed a pair of Syad missiles locked on and launched. But what they locked onto that night wasn't a drone. It was a B-2 Spirit, the U.S. Air Force's invisible sword, a flying wing of radar reflective angles near undetectable to even the most advanced tracking systems. You don't see a B-2 bomber unless it wants to be seen. That night, it didn't. The missiles burned into the sky, but the B-2 was gone before the warheads ever reached altitude. Not shot down, not hit, simply gone. And while the Houthis were scrambling to make sense of what just happened, the Spirit kept moving, smooth, silent, and already feeding its live reconnaissance data to the Diego Garcia halfway across the Indian Ocean. What the B-2 saw that night and what it shared would spark a retaliation the world wasn't ready for. This wasn't a standard strike package. This was not a drone swarming Ras Isa or a destroyer launching warning shot. This was the trigger moment that led to what we now know as one of the most surgical, strategic, and devastating airstrikes in recent U.S. military history. And yes, if you've seen our breakdowns of the Ras Isa bombing, you've seen the result. But this is the beginning. The moment the Houthis made the biggest mistake possible. They fired on the wrong aircraft, and the response wasn't just precise, it was personal. The instant the Syad missiles launched, the Houthi operators were already at a disadvantage. They had tracked a heat signature on a predictable path, assuming it was a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone, a frequent sight along Yemen's coast. What they didn't realize was that this wasn't a simple unmanned craft casually scanning for radar spikes. This was a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, and it was observing them in return. Flying high, cloaked in radar-absorbing material and shaped to deflect signals, the B-2 Spirit slipped silently into Red Sea airspace. Its radar cross-section, smaller than a bird's, made it nearly invisible. It wasn't simply avoiding detection, it was engineered to vanish. Yet somehow, a fleeting radar pulse pinged the bomber, giving the Houthis a fleeting opportunity. From a camouflaged SAM site dug into rocky terrain near Al-Hudaydah, two surface-to-air missiles screamed into the night. The B-2's threat receivers chirped faintly. Already deep into its mission, the pilot swiftly deployed countermeasures. No need for wild, evasive maneuvers. The bomber simply let its stealth cloak it again. The missiles lost lock. No explosions, no impact. Meanwhile, the B-2's onboard sensors meticulously recorded launch vectors, infrared signatures, missile trajectories, and, crucially, the coordinates of the launch site. At Diego Garcia, the data streamed live to analysts who mapped the terrain, flagged the launch site, and detected other equipment nearby. What initially seemed like an isolated threat revealed itself as part of a mobile launch network. While the Houthis scrambled to reposition, the U.S. Air Force had already built a comprehensive profile of their setup. Normally, a B-2 would complete its sortie, upload mission data, and let command decide the next move. Not this time. The B-2 Spirit wasn't just scouting, it was fully armed with GBU-57 bunker busters and JDAMs built for hardened targets. The attack on the B-2 was deemed a direct act of aggression. Orders came immediately: retaliate. At high altitude, hidden behind the curve of the Earth, the B-2 adjusted its course slightly southward, enough to line up its payload. While Houthis searched the night sky for wreckage, the Spirit locked GPS coordinates and released its first JDAMs. Invisible and precise, the bombs adjusted mid-flight and smashed into a hidden equipment hub. Explosions lit up the hillside. Moments later, two more bombs obliterated a reinforced underground shelter, likely hiding command assets or munitions. From the Houthi missile launch to the final blast, just 15 minutes. And the B-2? Already ghosting westward, unseen and untouchable. Mission complete. The B-2 didn't come to intimidate, it came to dismantle. It's not a frontline fighter, it's a surgical instrument carving out the enemy's core. As the Spirit dropped its bombs, it also painted a broader target map. Every hidden depot, every disguised antenna, every camouflaged bunker, the B-2 mapped them all. This real-time intel fed directly into U.S. strike planning. Within minutes, Super Hornets armed with GBU-38s and AGM-88s, HARMs, launched off carriers toward Yemen. First strike, the very SAM site that had dared to fire. Precision bombs pierced deep bunkers, igniting hidden munitions. Then a buried communications node 2 kilometers south was erased with a bunker buster. Meanwhile, USS Truman's Growler-jammed fighters hit Ras Isa, once considered too civilian to strike. No longer. Surgical JDAMs hit fuel clusters and tunnels, triggering massive secondary explosions. Offshore, a U.S. Navy destroyer fired Tomahawk missiles at Ras Isa's southern perimeter. One missile destroyed a weapons cache, another collapsed a hidden tunnel. Total time from first strike to final impact, under 6 minutes. 17 targets hit. Total battlefield dominance, all triggered by a single failed shot at a ghost. The aftermath was eerie. Radios fell silent, radar sights blinked out, vehicles fled inland, doors flapping open, headlights off, no coordinated defense, no return fire. Inside the Pentagon, reports came back. 0 civilian casualties outside the kill box, no U.S. losses, all targets neutralized. But what made the mission historic wasn't the destruction, it was the trigger. A single misjudged shot at what they thought was a drone had summoned the fury of stealth bombers, carrier firepower, and precision doctrine. This wasn't revenge, it was policy. A demonstration that firing on American assets carries consequences far beyond anything the Houthis had prepared for. By sunrise, the smoke over Ras Isa was visible from space. What was once a vital fuel terminal was now a blackened scar along the Red Sea coast. Inside Houthi territory, silence. Radio traffic dead. Ground sensors recorded convoys abandoned, fighters fleeing on foot. No public statements, no claims of victory, only smoke and silence. For years, Ras Isa had been a sanctuary, left untouched even during Saudi-led airstrikes. The Houthis believed it was untouchable. They were wrong. The decision to strike Ras Isa wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't retaliation, it was leverage. Ras Isa wasn't just a fuel depot, it was a lifeline. Powering logistics, funding drone factories, hosting comms nodes. U.S. intelligence had tracked it for months. When the B-2 came under fire, Ras Isa's protected status evaporated. Suddenly, civilian infrastructure wasn't off limits. It was a legitimate military target. Within 24 hours, oil markets shuddered. Defense analysts scrambled. Had the U.S. crossed a line or had the Houthis forced their hand? Inside Houthi command, chaos reigned. Radar systems were gone. GPS was jammed. Rumors of cyber attacks swirled. Officers demanded answers from a command structure that had ceased to exist. The B-2's mission didn't just destroy targets, it shattered a framework. Mobile launchers, key relays, command bunkers, all gone in minutes. The tempo of Houthi operations was broken. No public U.S. statement followed. Only satellite images of scorched earth and one unmissable reality. The game had changed. The message was clear: hide military ops behind civilian walls, and those walls become targets. The doctrine of engagement had shifted. Silence on a radar screen no longer meant you were safe. It meant you were already being targeted. April 17th didn't just leave craters, it rewrote the rules of the war. The events of April 17th were a turning point. Until then, U.S. operations in the Red Sea were reactive. Drones patrolling, destroyers shadowing, threats monitored cautiously. Ras Isa changed everything. The B-2 deployment wasn't just military force, it was a statement. We no longer fight on your schedule. For years, the Houthis and their backers in Tehran, Damascus, and elsewhere exploited the gray zone, launching attacks from civilian areas, hiding weapons and infrastructure, betting that American restraint would hold. That bet died at Ras Isa. The port wasn't just physically destroyed, it was redefined. Anything that sustains the war effort is now a valid target. For Washington, this wasn't escalation. It was clarification. The real shift was psychological. War isn't just fought with weapons, it's fought with tempo, confidence, and who controls the next move. After April 17th, that control no longer belonged to the Houthis. It belonged to the silent ones, already halfway home. The sky over Yemen is quiet again, but it's not peace. It's a pause. After the smoke cleared from Ras Isa, something fundamental shifted, not just in tactics, but in tone. The United States made it clear the rules are different now. You don't fire on a B-2 and walk away. You don't hide behind infrastructure and expect immunity. If you touch American assets, we don't wait. We answer. That single failed missile launch didn't just miss, it changed the equation. What began as a recon mission ended in a 6-minute display of precision warfare, driven by data and a doctrine that's no longer reactive, but relentless. Now every radar ping, every rogue convoy, every suspicious antenna carries new risk, not of being monitored, but of being wiped out before anyone knows. That's the legacy of April 17th and why this story matters. Let us know in the comments. What was the real turning point? The failed Houthi launch, the US strike on Ras Isa, or the simple presence of the B-2? And if you want to support the channel directly, join the fleet. You'll get loyalty badges, priority replies, and help bring more real naval stories to life. Click join on our channel page. Stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the war you don't see is the one that rewrites the rules.